Okay, this is a meeting of the Technology and Utility Subcommittee of the City Council. Could we have the clerk call the roll, please?
Chairman Martin.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
3 present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. We have 3 issues that have been referred for discussion from the full City Council. The first one is municipal aggregation, which is a funky term, but we'll get into the details of what that means in a minute. And also an update on the Comcast channel relocation. And then I think at the last meeting or the prior meeting, there was a petition of Extenet Systems to install some additional antennas on poles. I have no particular preference as to how we proceed in order, the members of the committee. Maybe we take the people that don't have to be here first. We could start with the Extenet petition. And I know Carly Cower is here from Extenet. And so by way of background for people who aren't here, I do think we improved kind of a larger Extenet project a few years ago with antennas located on the tops of telephone poles. I don't know a whole lot about that technology. And then there was a subsequent petition to add a more minor amount of service locations. So maybe you could just describe for us the extent of the technology in your petition.
There were 4 installed, and then about 4 last year. I think last September, I think they went in, and then we have this one node that we're putting in on Cabot Street. It's on existing utility pole. It's run on fiber optics back to an existing cellular hub location. It has a control box about halfway up the pole, about 8 feet up the pole, and then the antenna is on the pole top itself. It's probably about 2 feet extending at the top of the pole. I do have a couple photos too, but I don't know if you want to see them or if you've seen them before.
Sure, we'll take a look. So is this just one new location?
Just one.
That's all this is?
We do have a proposed location on Bridge Street that we're still working through, but that's more of a planning and zoning one and not a existing utility pole. So Extenet has 2 agreements within the city already for dark fiber and for rights to the right-of-way, utility right-of-way, and public facilities or town facilities.
Okay. Questions from members of the subcommittee?
Could you just explain what those 2 permits or permissions that you have?
The
One is a
agreements?
right-to-way.
One is for the town right-of-way, to be able to have access to it, even though as a CLEC in the state of Massachusetts, we're still allowed to be in the utility right-of-way or the town right-of-way. This actually gives us right-of-way through the town, agreeing to sort of what our project is, how we install, and the method of how we do that. And it gives the town a little more control of that how and why and what it looks like, having that agreement in place.
Okay. And what was the second?
The other one is a dark fiber agreement, even though we do have
I'm
locations.
sorry, what was the first? Dark?
Dark fiber.
Okay.
So the
Could
fiber
you explain that?
optics.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, dark fiber would either be, it's basically the strands of fiber optic cable that aren't lit up. So there are certain fibers that are not for the use of our network that are the towns, and there's certain use that are going for our network.
And where is that fiber?
That fiber is basically all through, there's a fiber map in the petition. One of the last pages in the petition actually will show you all of it. It'll show you where the existing is and some of the proposed fiber, because we're actually going down 1 street and over to Cabot to do this extension to the fiber network. So you'll see that on there, but that fiber agreement is basically outside of the node locations, the fact that we have communications fiber through each street connecting them all.
So is that on the, it's on the pole, it's not on the ground, it's
No,
from pole.
I think almost all of it is above ground. It
It's
will
above
detail
ground.
if something goes underground, but it would be an existing conduit, whether it be our own conduit, Verizon, or National Grid conduit that's existing. So it basically follows the electric path.
Okay, and what does these antennas serve? I mean, what?
These are for the wireless service provider. So this one is actually for Metro PCS. All of the antennas that are out there are currently on air with Metro. So it would be for your regular phone service or kind of all the services that Metro offers. It would be, your email and your phone, your text messaging, your picture messaging, Anything any of your smartphones can do or whatever service you have for Metro is going to be working in the town on those DAS nodes.
Okay, so for instance, Verizon has its own set of antennas,
On rooftop sites or cell
Rooftops.
towers.
and
yeah.
then
As Metro
AT&T
does
have
as
their
well.
own, and Metro PCS has their own, and any other cell service has their own set of
They all are on a
antenna, pretty
different
much.
frequency band. They all have a licensed frequency or a,
Okay,
so they're like, say, Metro was at 2119 and Verizon was at 850. And again, they have a 2100 spectrum as well. But they all have their own licensed spectrum that they run under.
so in order for people, so does every community, you have to go to many communities, or do you have these big cell towers that covers other areas, or how does that work? I'm sorry, I really.
How do they
just-
work together?
I don't understand, I'm getting to
Well, there
learn
are
this pretty-
areas that, like a lot of these nodes that we're putting in now, that we're infilling with our larger network, whether it be Metro, having a rooftop across the street or a tower a few miles away. A lot of these are for capacity. So we're getting to the point where the towers are overloaded or the rooftops are overloaded, or there's just no really way to expand on that existing footprint for them.
Okay,
So even though a lot of these are for regular coverage, drive coverage, regular path, just like a tower would be, a lot of these are for capacity as well. So you'll see, like one of the ones we have in zoning right now is on Bridge Street. There's one on each side of the bridge, at the intersection at the end, and then over the bridge, sort of going out of town. Those are so overly used and populated that we're trying to offset that capacity by adding another location. So that way it's going to take, some of those calls away from the ones that are overloaded and better diversify it in a sense. So it's not just for coverage at this point, it's a capacity play as well.
I see. Do you foresee a need? I mean, what is your projection, what is your plan?
For additional
fu-
ones in the
for
future, that's really driven by the carrier. We do a lot of work with the engineers. Like before we go out and pick a location, it's engineers on my company and on their side, and it goes through quite a bit of testing to figure out, what are we really going to cover? What's our objective here? And a lot of them are based on customer complaint or dropped calls or E911 gaps. We'll go in and try to remedy that situation based on that. It's not if you build it, they will come. It's much more of a, we need it now and we need to build it.
Okay, thank you. This has been very helpful. I just had one follow-up question. So you place them on the poles. Who, do you get permission to put the poles?
To put the pole, if we had to do a new
your
pole?
unit, your node on the pole? You have to
Well,
go
we
to.
actually have applied for these poles already. They would go, because they're co-owned by Verizon and National Grid, we put in pole attachment applications to both parties.
Okay,
And
so,
then they go through that process of make-ready, like the same idea as if National Grid came in to set a new pole. They would have their own kind of make-ready and moving of whoever else is existing on the pole to accommodate us for space.
so my question is, we have a double pole problem. Many communities, most communities, it's a
communities
huge
do.
issue with double poles. If by some chance that pole is cracked or repaired,
We wouldn't be able
I'm
to
thinking when
locate.
we ask National Grid, we say, look, there's so many double poles here, and they tend to blame Comcast, they tend to
Yeah.
blame Verizon, they tend to blame other companies because naturally their wires and even fiber optic are gonna be on these.
Yeah, well, because
poles.
one moves first, and then there's an order in which they have to be moved afterwards. I know there's a system for that online, whether it works well or not. We run into the same issue. When we go out, like for instance, we've applied for these poles back in January, and I actually still don't have all of the make-ready back because we're going down 2 streets to get to this one location. That fiber is going to hit every pole up to our location.
So you have to apply for permission for every pole that
Every
you
pole.
put fiber optic on.
And when we do that, what happens is, if anything, they call it make-ready work, basically. They have to make sure each of those poles are up to code and standard for us to reattach to them. So if you have a situation where we're going down the same road and we hit one that's a double pole, all of those companies have to move and accommodate for us to be on there anyways. So in a sense, we actually sort of fix the route on the way to our node locations. I mean, we can't guarantee that a double pole would be remedied all of the time, because most of the time, we move first anyways. Our communications and for us to be on air are more important than us, following a schedule for it. And we have enough crews to be able to remedy that. We've had pole strikes where, we have to get it in the next day and get it back on air. It's important to us, and it's important to Metro's clients to have that back on air. Our contracts with the client are such where if something was to go down, we have hour increments of when something needs to be back on air, or there are penalties.
So the incentive for your company is to get that antenna on the new pole.
And get everything on the new pole
Right,
as quickly
okay.
as possible.
All right, thank you for answering the questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I want to know.
Okay. Councilman Mendoza?
Quick question. Relative to a cell tower, what's the range of a pole antenna?
Like the coverage area,
Yeah,
they're pretty specific. I could probably get that for you too and show you, how much each DAS node is covering. But it really does depend on the topography, like, what kind of buildings we're around, how the street bends, if it goes up a hill. It's very specific.
but typically on a power basis.
I'd rather submit it to you than give you a ballpark of
Okay.
what the range is.
That's fair
It'd be
enough.
easier.
Thank you.
I think I might have submitted one already, but I can give you all the, what each one is covering and sort of their path and pattern for it. You have to understand though, when like different peaks of day, like even for cell towers, if say it's like 5 o'clock, everybody gets out of work and they call home, what's for dinner, whatever, that tower is actually going to shrink in coverage area as opposed to it being 3 in the morning and when it's, way out. So the same kind of thing happens with the DAS node as well. Although you're closer to the end user and that coverage in and out is less variable, it's the same idea for that.
I was asking about the
Oh, the distance?
greater distance, yeah. I mean, even if there's virtually no traffic, what would it cover? What are the chances of
Yeah,
connecting within
it is
that
pretty
area?
node specific.
Okay.
Because some of them are actually, most of the antennas are omnidirectional, but they're also tilted in a direction where it's hitting, north or south, or it's trying to do in-building coverage. It really does depend on each one. But I'll give it to you. I'll submit it for you so you can see what each one is covering and what the objective was for that node.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Councilor Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the young lady, and you're very knowledgeable, and I'm very proud of you. I just have this question about, in 2008, there were 40 locations, and at that time, did you come before the council? 'Cause I
They
really-
did. I think it was Tim Asta or Dave Schneider that would have been in front of council at that point. Yep.
So every time you need a location or a few locations, you come before this council?
I do. Usually it's just the city council. I don't usually go to a subcommittee and then back. But yes, we do.
Because I don't remember seeing you before, so it was somebody else, which I paid no attention to, so, anyway, thank you.
Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You spoke of the co-locate with the National Grid. Do you have to pay National Grid to co-locate it on their
To
pole?
attach to a national grid pole, there is an attachment fee that's a tariff rate for the state as a CLEC for both Verizon and National Grid, whoever the existing pole owner is.
Would you be comfortable to tell us how much it costs per pole per year?
I think it's actually like a scheduled rate that's available on MassGov site. I think it's actually out there, and I think National Grid actually has that out there. But I can give you a copy of our agreement with National Grid if you want to see it.
Since 2008 till now, what is the number of National Grid pole that you co-locate right now? I know that you indicated that through Councilor Mercier that it's 48 in 2008. What is the number now?
Oh no, there's 40. There were 40 that they originally built, and I
Right.
put 4 in last year. So this will be 45 plus one that we have sort of on deck. The amount of poles that we're touching for fiber, though, that one I would have to look up.
I see. Yeah, I do.
There is a fiber map that's been submitted to the city, and I believe there's one that I submitted a while ago that actually shows you every single pole that we're attached to, whether it be for fiber or just the node locations themselves, but it's pretty large and pretty lengthy. It's
Yeah.
a pole survey data, so it's
So
long.
So you indicated that you have a matter on Bridge Street before the zoning board. Has it not been resolved yet?
I'm going to resubmit for that this week. The location was rejected by the National Park for, I guess, they don't want us to use the trolley pole. We were going to attach to the trolley pole for that one. So we're going back in with a different setup for that, back to probably the steel standalone pole that we had originally applied for, and having it, be painted black and sort of fit the National Park's direction that they're going in for Bridge Street.
I see. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments from members of the council or the subcommittee? Okay, Mr. Clerk, if you could help me, I think the proper avenue for this to take is to refer to the wire inspector for final, or the subcommittee would recommend to the council, and then the council would forward the petition to the wire
I believe
inspector?
that it's a public hearing as well.
And a public hearing? But we had, do we have the public hearing already?
No, the matter was referred to the subcommittee, and there has not been a public hearing on it yet.
Okay,
So I think the next step would be a public hearing.
okay, so we'll recommend, well, I don't know what the wish of the subcommittee is, but I think from here on, it'll be the more routine process that you're used to, so whatever that is, that will
Back
work
to-
its way through.
Public hearing, city council. Is that scheduled today, or do I need to?
It's not scheduled for today.
No, I mean, will you schedule it today?
Right, but
We have your information, and you'll be informed of it
Okay.
as well. Yeah.
This month, though, right? Yeah, very soon.
Yeah, I would. Definitely this month it would be on for public hearing.
The other thing, though, my implementation director would be going and filing all the necessary permits with the wire inspector and whatnot, and final inspections happen for each node, so. just so
Okay.
you know.
All right, well, thanks. You've been very informative and helpful. We appreciate you coming in. What's the wish of the subcommittee? So move forward to a public hearing?
Yes, I'll make the motion.
Yeah,
Recommend that to the full council?
yeah, recommend to the council, sure.
Okay, so, motion by Councilman Donza to recommend the council refer this matter to public hearing, second by Councilor Elliott. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? So ordered. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, the next item on the agenda is an update for the Comcast channel relocation. I've been trying to keep in touch with Mr. Fenton about it, but Mr. Manager, you may know, so if you have anything to offer, it happened, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It did happen, as was their right under the regulations and contract or agreement with the city. And there have been ongoing meetings with the city and LTC along with Comcast. LTC's identified about a little over $2,000 worth of costs associated with this change of channels, and negotiations are ongoing with Comcast to have them reimburse. They've made a commitment to reimburse at least a portion, but obviously we're trying to get the full amount to paid to LTC for the changeover. Mr. Fenton may have something to add to that, but
Thank you. I think the manager has capsulized what it is. LTC has various costs for stationery, for cards, for uniforms, for various advertising information that they put out. And the costs originally was something in the neighborhood of $1,400, but then when they went out and tried to get quotes on it, the costs is, as the manager indicated, somewhere in excess of $2,000, $2,400 in that range. And so that's, what we're seeking to obtain back from Comcast. As you know, they are not obliged to pay anything. And,
Right.
And they have a right, of course, to change channels as they have upon giving 30 days' notice to the issuing authority, which they did. So they're within their rights, but we're trying to recoup some of the costs that LTC would incur.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Elliott?
No, I don't have
Sorry, I
it.
thought you had your hand up.
It's just frustrating, I'm sure, to all of us that, this channel has been moved. I even still regularly go right to Channel 10 when you want to look for public meetings. And we have no recourse. That's it. It is what it is. Of course, then I look at Channel 8. Is Channel 8 next? But will that be relocated somewhere that? I know where to go to look for the channel, but I don't know if most people still do.
no. And I know, if I may, Councilor Elliott's comments. I do know that Comcast did this throughout all of the communities around us and beyond, had that same changeover from the government channel 10 to the 95, I believe it is. 99. And there was some talk at one point to perhaps trying to get Channel 8 actually moved by LTC, that it might be worthwhile to do that so that all of their channels were in the same, range. But Comcast isn't prepared to do that at this point in time, but we'll continue to have some discussions with them on that.
Mr. Manager, if I could just follow up on that, because there are some people, at least at LTC, and I don't want to represent this as being a uniform position at all, at least not yet, but, there is some value, perhaps, to having all the local channels grouped in the same area in the 90s, probably because that's where a couple of them are now anyway. There are also a group of people at LTC that are trying to, would like more regionalization, for lack of a better word, but so that, Lowell City Council meetings like this one could be viewed in surrounding communities, that, the surrounding communities meetings could be moved in Lowell within that kind of local access band of channels. In fact, LTC has a meeting tomorrow at 2:30 for people that may be at the LTC headquarters at Market Street. For anyone who's interested in pursuing this topic or discussing what it might look like, I think there's some limited capability now to broadcast cross-town, but it is very limited, and there are technical challenges. But as I mentioned to Attorney Fenton, as our contract comes up for renewal, this should be on people's radar screens, because this has potential to improve, just the coverage generally of local government.
If I may, I have some knowledge of that. It's an idea that's been kicked around now, I believe, 15 years, thereabouts, to do this type of regional tie-in. And there has been quite a bit of interest in a number of communities. I think, and Attorney Fenton can probably speak to this more directly than I, but it was my understanding that about 15 years ago, in fact, it was the city that was opposed to that regionalization. So, but I do think there would be a vast improvement for the entire, and it would really bring back the potential for what the city had back 20 years ago, as well as the area communities with the TV, local or regional news programming.
The manager is correct. Some years ago, the prior administrations, not this manager, there was a suggestion made, and it was the inclination of that administration not to in turn show Chelmsford's meetings or show Drakett's meetings, in turn to have our meetings shown there. Don't ask me the rationale behind it, because I'm not certain.
Well, yeah, and I would just say this, there'd be less opportunity for our own meetings, right, if we're showing others. So there'd probably be fewer replays and maybe even fewer commissions that are televised, or maybe you just have one live and that might be the end of it if all the rest of the time is filled in. So, as I said, even LTC doesn't have a uniform position on this, but I think it's, but they are going to pursue discussion of it. And other cable access channels from surrounding communities, at least some of those people are interested too. So there is a group kind of coalescing, at least trying to pursue whether this makes sense. Any other comments on this issue? If I may, Councilor Laurie called me today. I got an email earlier this week. We continue to get, and in fact, I got two personally myself today, complaints about Comcast service, which invariably I think relates to price for service and the lack of our ability to have any real say over price or competition at this point. And I know we've made many efforts to try and get Verizon to come in, and so I just, for the, repeating what the status and what very limited ability we have, Mr. Manager, if you could comment on.
Well, we do have limited ability, certainly with regards to bringing Verizon in. I know that as city manager, I attempted to get Verizon on several occasions. I know that former city manager Cox tried as well to do that. And for some business reason, Verizon chose not to go into a number of cities. In fact, I believe the last time I checked it, and they've pretty much put a freeze on the rollout of FiOS. The city of Boston doesn't have FiOS. The city of Cambridge doesn't. I don't believe Worcester or Springfield have FiOS either. So this was a business decision that Verizon made, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but that's my understanding. And as I said, they're now finishing out their capital investment of the rollout of FiOS in other communities, and until that's completed, they have no plans to move into any of those cities. With regards to the programming, and we probably want to come back to talking about FiOS a little bit, but with regard to the fees, the cable fees, there is a recent, and I'm not sure whether, I haven't really, Attorney Fenton and I haven't talked about this much, but the city of Boston recently, there was a decision that allowed them to have some role in the setting of fees. And I think we all need to understand that decision more fully to see what the city of Lowell might be able to do. And I see Attorney Fenton reaching to the microphone, so he must already have a opinion on that.
No, but I know that as far as Boston was concerned, it had to do with the basic fee for the basic tier, and it would not extend to any of the upgraded tiers. However, that's about all I really know about the details.
And that's what I know about it too. It was the very lowest tier, just the over-the-air channels.
Which is where and if you talk to Comcast or Verizon or RCN or any of the other cable providers, what they'll tell you is that they're very much victims of the same sort of pressures, if we can accept that in fact it's the program providers that charge them. So the HBO charges them a certain amount that they then have to charge in order to make their numbers. The sports programming, in particular, the ESPN and the various sports networks, Major League Baseball, NFL, so on. So, but that's so it's the basic is there's a little bit more. It's a little simpler there, perhaps, for that to be regulated.
Right. But it's the lowest number of subscribers, and it's probably the lowest cost.
Right.
So when I read that, I didn't hold out a whole lot of optimism for us. Councilor Laurie?
Thank you, Chairman Martin. The question I had, I received a complaint about the way Comcast, they deliver the service now. Did it go from digital or analog, or from analog to digital? I'm not familiar with the type of language, but it appears they've changed their service to the city and how they deliver their product, and it has created a problem in some homes. I guess if you're trying to record channel 4, 5, or 25 and watch another program, you just can't do it now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not. That may very well be the case using old VCR or type equipment, because that is analog, I believe. This is getting into an area that I'm really not well versed in, but I believe that's analog, and their signal is all coming across digitally.
Yeah.
They did upgrade. That's been a couple of years now, right? Where you had to get the small little box, and
Right.
pretty much anything that's being recorded has to run through a descrambler now.
I just didn't know if they notified the city. Did they change the way they deliver their service, or?
Well, at the time, but that wasn't recent.
Right, that goes back about maybe 4 years ago now, and I believe they came in and actually made a presentation to the council, and I believe it may have been Councilor Mercier who asked for a presentation at the senior center for the seniors to get some training on how to make these connections.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too got email from and call from a number of people, particularly the seniors, who are concerned about Comcast in terms of raising their basic cable price for the last few years. Like you and the rest of the council, I'd like to see if we can bring back under control the basic price for, it's certainly going to benefit our seniors and the low-income people. I know that the city of Boston, under Mayor Menino's, filed a petition asking the Federal Communications Commission to give the city the emergency controls over the price of basic cable service in Boston. I don't know what's the outcome of that, or I don't know if there's any, the mayor or the city council have any teeth in it, but certainly, if there is opportunity or if there's any chance at all, we should give it a try, because it certainly help our seniors and the low-income resident in the city.
If I may, and I'm not sure what the agreement was with the city of Boston with regards to a senior discount, but we, in fact, we're one of the few communities that does have a senior discount, and just limited, I believe, just to seniors. But that's only on the basic cable. It's not on anything above basic cable.
Councilor Mercier.
Thank you. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I think that FCC allows the cable companies to just go up almost whenever they feel like it. I put them in the category with Pan Am and the railroad, the state. It seems like they have, it's like they're an entity unto themselves, and the rest of you be damned. Yes, I will tell you that LTC does give a discount to the seniors. The discount is so small that the rate that they raise their rates is less than the discount they give anyways. They don't give the discount on the whole package. They give it on the basic, the minimum. So they're not really doing us a favor at all. But be that as it may, and I'd like to say to the public that we will do whatever we can to keep the rates low. We have no say in it, none whatsoever. And I'm not going to mislead the public to believe that we as a council can do something about it. Our hands are tied. We can't do anything about it, and that's strictly the truth. And having said that, that's it.
Councilor Elliott.
Excuse me, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fenn, could you explain a little bit about the FCC decision as it relates to the city of Boston? How does that affect competition? Is there competition in the city of Boston, or are they just given the authority to regulate the basic cable rate?
Well, I believe that the decision had to do with competition. They have RCN as well as Comcast in the city of Boston. And because there was competition, that was the leg that allowed Boston to in turn get authority to have some regulation over the basic tier. We do not have, of course, competition here. The Telecommunications Division of the state, the Department of Telecommunications, does have some say to review basic rates, but municipalities do not have any control, as Councilor Mercier indicated, over basic rates or any of the upper tiers. And as we all know, the costs keep going up depending on the tier level that we have.
Okay, thank you. That's what I thought, that there was at least another company in the city of Boston. So the problem, or the reason why we're stuck, is because Comcast owns all of the copper wiring, correct? I mean, they own, whether it's above ground or below ground, all of the wiring throughout the city. So nobody wants to come in because of the investment, including FiOS, to raise to install the fiber optic. Right. And I think the problem is, as I understand it, this copper wiring can only handle so much data, so many bytes, whether it's internet and or the digital frequency. I don't know all the terminology. So at some point, it's going to outlive its life. I mean, the equipment can't handle the progression of technology, and so I don't know, what's going to happen other than a company comes in and wants to invest in laying fiber optic, which apparently can handle, I don't know how many times more data or more gigabytes of transmitting it.
Comcast, actually, what Comcast has is sort of a hybrid. It's some of it's fiber and some of it's copper. And I can't remember right now whether, I guess the main lines are fiber, and then the connections into the nodes is copper. So it does limit. So particularly with internet access, people will find that when there's a lot of people online, it slows the system down, whereas with the totally fiber system, it's virtually limitless how many people can be on there, and the speed is quite, but you're right, as time goes on, that's where technology's heading, and Comcast will then be in a position of having to change over in order to deal with that. Of course, if there's no competition, and that was the problem. I think RCN was looking at Lowell at one point in time. I think this goes back to the 90s, actually. The RCN was looking at Lowell as well as some of the other area communities, and they ran into financial difficulties, and they pulled back. And I don't even know if they did a full build-out in Boston. And of course, but that is one of the risks that someone coming in, a Verizon will come in and they'll perhaps roll that out, accepting that they'll grab some percentage of the market and start to eat in more as time goes on, head-to-head against Comcast. But there aren't many companies that are able to do that.
My other question
If I could just add something, and that is that, yes, RCN did express an interest, but because of the costs and because of their financial situation, they backed out of any interest in Lowell. And I don't know that they're involved anywhere in this community, in this area rather, other really than Boston.
Thank you. Councilor
I
Elliott.
just wanted to follow up. One of the other concerns, people say, well, I don't have any other choice, and I know the answer is, well, you have DirecTV or you can get a dish. But the problem with that, and we've discussed it, is people cannot get the local access channels. They don't get, 8 or 99 or 95. Because why is that? And I think there was an explanation, maybe it's the same, that Comcast allocates a certain dollar figure to LTC, and that's part of the agreement. But LTC is a separate corporation. Do they raise any funds, or would that be the challenge if LTC were to be able to be broadcast through DirecTV?
Well, LTC, they get most of their money, and I'm not sure the actual percentage, but they get most of their money from the cable contract. If a Verizon or an RCN were to come in, there would be a requirement that a similar amount be paid. Now, what would happen is the Comcast, assuming it's split 50-50, Comcast's revenue sharing would drop by 50%, and the other company would have to would come up with the other 50% so that LTC would be kept whole. It's a level playing field type arrangement. I don't know of any local cable corporation that goes over DirecTV. What local cables are doing, local cable TV systems are doing, is they're making more use of the internet. So, for instance, right now, people are watching this meeting over the internet, not necessarily through Comcast. They may be on any internet service that's out there, including wireless. So, someone who doesn't have Comcast but they need some type of internet access, whether it be through Comcast or through Verizon Wireless or one of the other wireless providers. They could conceivably get this through the internet. And I don't know of anyone, though, that ties in with DirecTV, because, again, that's comes out of a head end that is broadcast out wirelessly. But I don't
Okay.
know about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right, any further discussion on the Comcast matter? All right, then if none, we'll move to, and I don't think there's any action to be taken by the council on that, just, Mr. Manager, if you just keep us informed as these discussions continue. The last item on the agenda was actually the first matter referred to the Subcommittee on Municipal Aggregation. If you could just give us an update as to where we are with that and what it is to refresh people's memories who aren't familiar with the terminology.
Sure. I'm going to pass this over to Tom Moses, who's been involved with this more directly.
Not a lot in milestones have happened since we last talked about this, but a lot of work has gone in. We put together an RFP for a consultant to do the filing with the Public Utilities Commission.
Could I just, I'm sorry, Mr. Moses, if I could interrupt you for a minute. So
okay.
what this is,
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy to say it, but what you
Sure.
can say it.
Municipal aggregation is the ability for the community to enter into longer-term contracts to buy the commodity, to buy the electricity. Transmission is not affected at favorable contracts, and then pass those savings on to citizens of the city.
So the concept, and I actually have one right here, every once in a while you get a direct mail solicitation from, this one happens to be from Direct Energy, but I've got them from a company called Old Dominion, offering consumers the option to buy their electricity from someone other than National Grid. They still get it delivered through National Grid, but the source of the power can be from another company, right? So that an individual consumer can do that. But this is a process where we would kind of take the lead on behalf of all the individual consumers in the city.
Right, we would do that so the individual didn't have to do that. The individual then could choose to take part in the city's offer or not. It's up to them. The city can't make an offer unless it actually produces savings for the consumer. So they're not going to be offered a deal that will cost them money.
Okay. So, and we've had some success doing this for the city, right?
That's correct.
Ourselves. So all that is kind of by way of background, and where we are with this, there needs to be a
Right. We need
filing, you
to
said?
hire a consultant who is familiar with PUC filings to be able to file to be essentially a wholesaler for the city, to be a wholesaler. Once that goes through the PUC approval process, we would enter into a contract with a consultant or a broker to get the best deals, and then go about making the offers.
Okay, so PUC is the Public Utility Commission at the state,
Right.
and so we're soliciting proposals.
Yeah, those proposals are due on May 24th.
Okay, so through that process, we hope to have somebody who can make a filing with the state, and once that goes through channels, there may be a reduction or an offer being able to make to a reduction for, is this electric?
This is electric, yes.
Okay. Any sense as to what the savings potentially could be? Is it, it's small, I expect,
I
right?
don't think it's a huge savings, but it's possible that a consumer might save 5% on their bill. So even that, on a $100 electric bill for a month, $5, that's $60 a year.
Okay.
It's more than our tax increases.
Okay. So those are due the end of May or sometime toward the end of May.
Right.
Okay. Questions from other members of the subcommittee or other members of the council? Councilman Donza?
Do we have any idea of how long the filing process would take once the consultant submits it? How long before we potentially could offer the lower rates to our citizens?
This will probably take several months. There aren't that many communities in Massachusetts that have done it yet. So there's not a big track record to go on. It took the Cape Cod communities who did it through a commission the better part of a year, although there are other communities that are in the process now that may be getting that in a much shorter time frame. But it's only happened 2 or 3 times, so it's hard to tell.
So at the earliest, we'd be looking at maybe October at the earliest, probably later. Would that be fair to say?
We'll have a better sense when we hire the consultant, because the consultant that we hire, whoever it is, will probably have some experience in other communities, and we can ask them when they're hired how long it takes, but I can't really tell you at this point.
Okay. Well, just, I'm really interested in this as the potential savings to our residents, so if you would just keep us posted as status changes or more knowledge is gained as to especially how long or how soon we could offer it to our residents.
And if another benefit of this program, and aggregation's been kicking around for a while, ever since the deregulation back in the 90s, and it sort of fell by the wayside for some reason. But one of the benefits that many communities look to, and we would certainly be looking to, is the energy conservation money that right now is paid to National Grid and then spread by National Grid as they see fit. We would be able to grab that for the city. And by that, I mean that we could utilize it for loan programs and for our residents to help them, or some type of grants to help them make their homes more energy efficient.
Other questions from members of the council or the subcommittee? All right. All right. Hearing none, I guess I don't know that there's any further action needed. Just keep us updated as the status of this changes. Okay. Have no other business to come before the subcommittee. Entertain a motion to adjourn by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Meeting stands adjourned.